Hi there, and welcome to Fuzzy on the Details. My name is Fuzzy, and if you're interested in learning more about the Marvel Multiverse Roleplaying Game, you have come to the right place. This week is Krakenweek. Krakenweek is a really fun tabletop community event created by YouTubers Ginny D and Pointy Hat. It's kind of like the Discovery Channel's Shark Week, but for TTRPGs. Ginny has over 80 videos on her Krakenweek playlist, but almost all of them are for D&D. So why should I, your friendly neighborhood MMRPGer, want to get in on all this Krakeny action? No, it's not the view. It's far more important than views, okay? It's because Marvel had the Kraken first. Right there, July 10th, 1970, 4 years before D&D was first published, the Kraken makes his Marvel debut in the pages of Submariner. That's right, the Kraken is ours. It's practically like a birthright, okay? I mean, like, what did we ever take from you, D&D? I meant, what did we take from you besides, major design inspiration for the game that we love? What? Moving along. If you're into Krakens, you're in luck, because this comic book has not one, not two, but 3 different Krakens in it. There's the KRAKEN Kraken, there's a mechanical Kraken, and of course, there's everyone's favorite maritime supervillain, Commander Kraken. But despite the central place that these Krakens have in Marvel lore to this very day, the developers of this game have not given us any Kraken builds. Well, we're going to remedy that today on the channel. 3 Krakens, 3 builds. Let's get into the details. Let's tackle these Kraken in the order of appearance in the comic. The first threat that Namor faces is an underwater construct that he first believes is the Kraken itself, but is really a man-made vessel capable of great destruction. I think it'll be fun to use the new vehicle rules to stat up this mechanical monstrosity. Vehicle rules first appeared in Cataclysm of Kang. I'll put a link to a video on those rules in the description. But we recently got a sneak peek into how they'll be expanded when the X-Men expansion comes out in August. That was during the IGN Live event when we got our first look at the X-Men's Blackbird. I'll include a link to that as well. So this will be a fun opportunity to make a vehicle using this brand new profile that we were shown. The Blackbird we see here is like many of the other vehicles we already have in the game, from the Fantasticar to Nick Fury's VTOL jet, to Hydra attack helicopters. They all rely strongly on energy powers to cause damage. There aren't any vehicles in the game yet that can mix it up in close combat like the Kraken can, so we need to think a little differently. The Blackbird and the Kraken are roughly the same size, so we'll go with size gigantic and health score 200 for the Kraken. Instead of a flight speed, of course we'll give it a swim speed. For reference, Namor has a swim speed of 12 thanks to his super speed power. A regular human swim speed is 3, so I said we'll put the Kraken at about a 9. We don't have the full vehicle rules yet, so this is more of an art than science right now. For passengers, we know there's at least 8 crewmen on the ship. We see 7 in the art here, plus the commander who's off panel. Submarines tend to be pretty cramped, so it shouldn't be much more than that. Let's put it at 12. One thing our Kraken will need is damage reduction. It makes sense for an underwater vehicle that has to withstand tremendous pressure, but we can also see in this slide that it's capable of taking a punch from Namor, who is no slouch with a mighty 3 power. I think a damage reduction of 2 makes sense, which is up there with the Hydra tank, so we'll go ahead and give the Kraken ship the sturdy 2 power. And that's a good segue into powers. Whether you're statting up a character, a vehicle, or a piece of equipment, if you're using the comics for inspiration, sometimes the words on the page can suggest what powers you should assign as much as the art does. These 2 panels offer a perfect example of that. The words squeeze, power, grip, and crush are all bolded. To represent the power of this ship, let's assign a mighty 2. That's 1 less than Namor has. With the words crush and grip highlighted, well, the crush and grip power is a no-brainer, allowing the vehicle to both grab and possibly pin its foes, and causing damage when doing so. There's no evidence that these tentacles can effectively slam opponents, so we don't have to assign any other offensive powers, especially since there's the added threat of being grabbed or pinned while underwater. If you just hit somebody, they can flee up to the surface. We also don't see any evidence that the vehicle is capable of attacking multiple opponents at once, despite the many limbs. So this is clearly not Stark-level tech we're talking about here, so let's keep things very simple. So with that, we're done. Alright, now let's stat up Commander Kraken. His primary purpose is to pilot the Kraken, but he does have a few tricks up his sleeve, like a clawed hand capable of delivering electric shocks. I envision this version of the character as rank 2 at most. There's a later incarnation that has some upgraded powers, even fights Iron Man, but when you're creating a character, there's no reason you can't focus your vision. The simpler and more streamlined the builds, the more effective they are most often. Let's just set him at rank 2 and move on to biography. For origin, Commander Kraken clearly has a high-tech origin. Let's go with high-tech cybernetics. For occupation, we'll go with criminal. And here we see the traits and tags that we get for the choices we just made. One clear addition we'll need to make for traits is to give him the piloting trait. Let's also give him gearhead as well, as he seems to have a pretty good understanding of how a ship operates. Tags are all freebies, so we can take as many as we like. Villainous is an obvious choice. And extreme appearance is another one commonly given to characters with cybernetic limbs. His real name was never revealed, so we'll give him secret identity as well. Oh, and finally, signature weapon, claw. Alright, now on to the fun stuff, powers. Commander Kraken should be able to fight with his claw, use it to deliver electric bursts, and he does demonstrate some martial arts powers as well. Let's start off by giving him elemental control electricity. We do see him deliver a blast through the claw itself while grappling with Namor, so let's try to build towards elemental infusion. Taking burst is a prerequisite to move further up the power tree. And there's infusion right there as a rank 2 power. Perfect. We could take elemental blast as well, but let's see what else we can do before we do so. Looking at how Commander Kraken likes to attack, he tends to move in close. For melee, I like this idea of him capitalizing on Namor's weaknesses, using his comparatively weak abilities to their fullest extent. So let's give him the exploit power, which gives him a chance to ignore damage reduction on a reactive attack. We'll take vicious attack as the prereq, and then we can take exploit. Finally, let's look at a couple martial arts powers that represent how, like his namesake, he tends to get all grabby with Namor. Grappling technique is definitely the right choice here. I don't see a lot else that comes to mind, so let's just put a pin in that and move over to tactics. He does order his crew around quite a bit, more than he actually attacks. So we could have some good options here. Keep moving is a really good one, and I like on your feet as well. I can imagine him shouting these actual words at his crew. Hit the dirt doesn't make sense to me only because I don't see him as particularly mindful of his crew's well-being. That leaves us with one more power to take. Let's look at the basic powers and see if there's anything that calls to us. Combat trickery is a possibility for a scoundrel like the Commander, but I'm thinking we pour on the tactical leadership qualities and go with inspiration. Looking at the powers and traits we've selected, it really paints a picture for Commander Kraken. He's a villain who hides behind his ship first and then behind his crew, and only then will he utilize his powers. So let's review the power selection so we can make smart decisions when choosing our abilities. Elemental Burst uses agility, as does his piloting trait, so agility is definitely important. Infusion doesn't require anything, but does rely on a physical attack, so melee will be important for him. It's used by vicious attack, exploit, and grappling technique as well. His tactic powers and inspiration are automatic, so don't require any ability score rolls, so that's good. So let's go up here. We've got 10 points to play with. I think we can get away with a relatively low resilience. He doesn't really join the battle very early, and one shot from Namor took him out. 1 is a little bit low for a melee character, so let's go with 2, giving him 60 health. Vigilance doesn't have to be too high either. A lot of his powers like inspiration and keep moving don't have a focus cost, neither does his elemental burst. For melee and agility, which should be his best stats, let's put them both at 3, and that last point's a toss-up. I'm going to put it into ego just in case he's in a situation where he needs to command his crew to do anything. And there you go. Behold Commander Kraken. I'm going to put a link to this build in the description because I know you're all going to want to play him like immediately. Alright, finally let's take a look at the build for the actual Kraken. This is a much larger build, so I won't go through it step by step, but I will explain a couple of fun things I did with this build. Like for example, did you know you could take the big trait up to 5 times? I used all 5 of the traits I got for each of my ranks and converted 2 additional powers to get 7 traits total. That gets me to gargantuan size, which knocks my melee and agility defenses down by 5 points each, but there are other benefits, and the one you don't want to sleep on is the fact that your reach is increased to 320 spaces. Even if you're Namor and your swim speed is 12, and you double move every turn, 320 divided by 24, that's 14 rounds that I get to attack you before you get to land a punch on me. That's nuts. Big and strong monsters tend to be weak-minded, but our Kraken is guarded against mental and fear attacks with Iron Will and Fearless. Let's go over to powers. Additional Limbs applies edges on all attacks, and banging heads is particularly good for gargantuan creatures because of their extended reach. There will always be a couple of enemies within reach to slap together. Brawling gets the agility defense up a bit, despite dumping the stat. Counter-strike technique, which requires attack stance, allows for more attacks in a round via reactions. Of course, grappling technique and crush and grip are just good for any tentacle horror. Do this all day will make him even tougher, and perhaps more importantly, it's a prerequisite to always ready, which gives us an extra martial power reaction per round, such as the aforementioned counter-strike technique. Environmental protection and healing factor are thematic, since giant squid live in the ocean depths and can regrow limbs. Mighty 4 represents the obvious strength of the Kraken, and Sturdy 3 is as high as we can get without being rank 6. Speed Swim helps the character be even harder to kill because they can swim and put some distance between them and any enemies whenever they need to heal up a little bit, whether it's via healing factor or do this all day. By the way, if you ever wanted a breakdown on your speeds, just click in the box over here. Demiplane's so cool. Untouchable Position is great because this is the kind of big bad that is always going to get ganged up on, so giving most of your enemies trouble, that's a pretty sweet deal. And finally, Wisdom helps guard against mental attacks, much like our traits, by upping our logic defense. So our end result is an extremely tough to kill enemy that can attack lots of your heroes in a single round, is hard to gang up on, can't easily be dominated by magic or telepathy, and there's plenty of flexibility for you to tweak him as well. You could easily knock agility and logic down a point and take a power like lightning reflexes. That could further simulate all the attacks your extra tentacles would give. This guy would make a really good boss battle for an underwater arc in your campaign. Oh, and hey, speaking of boss battles, my next video is going to focus on just that. Some of the suggestions for this third build came out of a conversation that Billy Mickle and I just had, and we'll be sharing next week on the channel. Of course, if you're subscribed and you got your notifications turned on, you won't miss it. Well, that's all I've got for you today, true believers. If you came to this video because of Krakenweek and you're interested in learning more about the Marvel Multiverse Roleplaying Game, consider checking out my new player FAQ, link in the description. But either way, thank you so much for watching and your support. Happy Krakenweek, and have a great day.